Hey there. Good afternoon.
Hey.
We are back again. I have my friend Tonie Hampton with me today. And we're going to be doing this, as I said yesterday, every weekday this week at 1 p.m. Eastern time. So welcome you to keep joining in. And then after that, it will be on Fridays at 1 p.m. So I've asked my friend Tonie to come today, and being a military family, we move around a lot. So she is a friend from a different assignment, another place when we lived in Illinois. And she was part of my Bible study group. And she was a part of the original conversation that I mentioned yesterday of when I was in Illinois, and there were things that came up in the news. And I invited some of my Black friends to lunch with me, and I just said, tell me what I need to know. And that was so moving for me. Thank you for doing that then, and thank you for showing up again and helping me work through this and helping me to understand things that I don't have to deal with. And I really appreciate that. I really appreciate your honest friendship and your willingness to come and sit down with me and talk about these things. So do you want
I appreciate you.
You want to tell us a little bit about yourself and your family? And
Yes. My name is Tonie Hampton. Like she said, I was born in 1960, so I have a little bit of history with the racial thing. I am originally from a small town in South Central Ohio. It's about a half an hour outside of Columbus, and it's a predominantly white Caucasian. I'm not sure what is preferred, Caucasian or white. But that that's where I was born and raised. My dad was born and raised there. My grandmother born and raised there. My mom is from a town about 30 miles south of there, and the racial disparities was huge where she's from. My mom went up to the 8th grade. She went to an all-Black school because they were separated then. And when she got to high school, she realized how far behind they were. And so I remember her telling me these things, and this was probably my first experience of knowing there's a difference. And, but listening to my mom, but when you're young, you think, oh, that was back in the day, that's old times. You don't think that applies to you. My dad was from Jeffersonville, is a really small town. It had one traffic light. And so it's very small. And he went to school there, and he was an extremely talented athlete. He was actually drafted used to be the St. Louis Browns, which is now the Cardinals, when he was in high school, but he was 18, and at the time, then he got drafted, and like a lot of other Caucasian people that may have gotten drafted, they were able to get out of it to play pro sports, but being Black, he wasn't.
Oh, really?
So he missed that opportunity. Yeah. And
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah. So, that's where I'm from. Now, I grew up we lived there was only one street of where Black people lived, but we didn't live on that street. We lived, it was actually the same road, but you had to go around this curve. And when you pass that curve, you're in the Black end of town. We lived where the white people lived. And so all my friends were white. I grew up playing with white friends, but even as a kid, I would say my soonest memory would be about 10, when I would get called the N-word by other kids, and rocks thrown at us, just because. We were girls and these are boys. We didn't even mess around with them, and we're kids, and they would throw rocks at us and stuff, and you had to deal with that. And then you knew, Elizabeth, I can't tell you what that does to a kid when you find out that, wow, I'm different. And from what I'm hearing is I'm bad.
Yeah.
I'm not good.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really does a number on your self-esteem.
Mm-hmm. Especially when it's based on something you didn't choose and can't change.
Yeah.
It's totally unfair.
Yeah. I mean, I remember asking, or my mom she encouraged us, she pushed us to do everything we could in school, sports. I was a cheerleader, things like that, because she was never allowed to.
Yeah.
And so for her, she wanted her kids to be able to do those things. And so we did. And she put us in Girl Scouts, Brownies. We were in everything.
Did all the
And
things.
all the sports. And so I remember she just wanted us to be able to experience school, the American dream kind
Mm-hmm.
of thing. So we did that. And when I went out for cheerleading, which I really loved that,
Mm-hmm.
and it was fifth grade, and you had to try out in front of the entire school. Well, there's not very many Black people there, and I tried out, and that night, my grandmother, my dad's mom, called because one of her friends was one of the judges, and she was a white lady,
Mm-hmm.
and she was saying she was good, but her shoes were dingy.
What?
So, but my grandmother let her have it. My grandmother was a little woman, but
Good old grandmas. Yeah.
she was fiery. And so then my grandmother called my mom and said, "Get her some new shoes." And so I made it, and I was a cheerleader, and I really liked it. And then I got to high school, and the high school is Miami Trace High School, and it was actually built in 1962. Was the first graduating class out of there. So when I got there, of course, I wanted to try out for cheerleading when I was in eighth grade to try out, for the high school. And I would have been only the second Black person to ever be a cheerleader since 1962. And I remember this is what this the differences that are made, and you're living in a white area, and you try your best to assimilate. You want to fit in.
Mm-hmm.
But this is what it does to you. I remember my dad would pick me up from the practice that you have before tryouts, and this other boy, a Black boy that lived down the street from, he lived around the curve. He would catch a ride with us
Mm-hmm.
home, and when I went to get in the car, my dad said, "I don't know why you're doing this. You're not going to make it."
Oh.
And so did Dave. His name was David. He said the same thing. He goes, "I know. There is no way they're going to have a Black girl out there."
Mm.
And I didn't say anything, but that hurt me so bad. My own dad.
Yeah.
And so I remember, in my mind, I didn't say anything, but I was like, "I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you." And I made it.
Yay.
I did. I made it. And then the next day, I remember my dad took credit for it. And he said, "I talked to my old coach." He started saying this. And I'm thinking, he's a shop teacher. It has nothing to do with it. And I remember him doing that. And I thought, why would you do that? As a Black man, it's your daughter. Why would you do that? Why would you take away?
Mm-hmm.
But he had really, now I'm grown, I know these things, the self-esteem and the battering that he took. He was the only Black boy in his class, and he was really, I told you, an exceptional athlete. And he used to get called names. I mean, the whole stands would be yelling Bosco for two when he played basketball, because Bosco used to be on a chocolate milk carton. It was a Black cowboy, and he used to get called that all the time. But he turned it. He embraced the name,
Mm-hmm.
and he would use it against the crowd. He would say it,
Mm-hmm.
Bosco for two more.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought about, my grandmother used to tell me stories, his mom. I couldn't imagine being a parent because I couldn't take it.
Yeah.
I couldn't take it.
Yeah.
And so, and then I'll move into that after I got married and we had started having kids. When we lived in Wyoming, I worked and I had the manager of the place tell Black jokes to me because she didn't know what I was.
Hmm.
She had no idea what my nationality was. And so she was the boss and she told me Black jokes. And to be honest with you, I didn't really know what to do with that.
Yeah.
I just thought, first thought was she doesn't realize I'm Black because there's no way she'd be telling these very derogatory, mean jokes to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I came home and I told my husband, and then I said something to another girl, she was white too, about it, that it bothered me. And she told her, "Do you know she's Black?" And then she apologized all over herself. She was so embarrassed that she did that.
But if she wouldn't say it in front of you, she shouldn't say it at all.
At all.
She should have been that embarrassed of herself before, regardless of who you are.
Exactly. But she didn't. And it's like a, for a lack of better term, it's an ignorance.
Mm-hmm.
That some people just don't know any better. I mean, it's just the way you start to think about it. Because I think a lot of Black people learn how to act in front of white people.
Mm-hmm.
You have to learn how to act because your actions may not, a white person might not understand your actions and they'll think it's threatening or it's something that it's not.
Yeah, I've heard that from some other friends of mine who's like, when I speak how I really am, they just think I'm an angry Black woman, and I'm like, I'm not. That's the real me. And that hurts me to hear that people feel the need to suppress who they are to placate other people. That's not how Jesus wants us to live.
No, and he made us. Susie Douglas and I had a conversation about a week ago. We were talking about this, and we were talking about, God made us different for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason, and I keep going back to the scripture in Corinthians. It talks about the parts of the body, and you're one body, and you're supposed to work together. You all have different functions. You're all different. The hand can't do what the heart can do, and and we're supposed to operate that way. So we know that God did this intentionally. But I'll tell you what, Elizabeth, when I was in high school, I have prayed. I would pray. I would have conversations with God, asking him, why did you make me Black? Because it was awful. It like when it was a television series, Roots, came out, the Alex Haley Roots came out. I remember, we were so intrigued. My parents and my mom, my sisters and brothers, we were all into that because it was the first time we're really seeing what happened. And I remember I was in 11th grade, and my American literature teacher, her name was Kay Black. She made a big deal because a lot of people were watching that show. She emphasized, this is fiction. This didn't really happen. And I'm thinking on the inside of me, I know it happened. Because you may not be putting us in shackles that we can see, but there's some shackles on us, And I remember thinking that, and here I am in high school, and you can't talk back to your teachers, and especially as a Black kid in a white school, you're not doing that. And so it was awful. And I remember praying and asking God, why did I have to be Black? I liked boys, and they were white.
Mhm.
But that's who I was attracted to. I was attracted to a white boy, and but I would keep that secret. Like nobody knew.
Mhm.
And, but I guess my actions, people could tell.
Mhm.
And I remember one girl, the boy that I liked, she was his girlfriend. And but he liked me. I
Mhm.
mean, I knew it and he knew it. Other
Just
people knew
just
too,
couldn't
but
say it out loud.
right. And uh, she told one of her friends came to me and said, "Do you like him?" And I said, "Why?" And she said, "Because her friend that was his girlfriend said, should I worry because he was trying to go to on when you're a senior, you get to go to Kings Island, which is an
Mhm.
amusement park for senior night. It's just open to all seniors in the state of Ohio. And he wasn't a senior. He was actually a junior because I was up a grade. And so he uh, made it to where he got to go. And he was going in the same car with the same friends I was going with. It wasn't planned. I didn't even know about it until this girl was telling me this. And I remember her saying to me that the girlfriend said, "Should I be worried? I shouldn't be worried, should I?" And then she said, "Oh, she's black. I wouldn't worry about her. She's black, so I don't have to worry."
Mhm.
And I remember that feeling. I'm a girl.
Mhm.
I,
It's
I
like
have,
negating your existence almost.
yeah, I'm a girl.
Yeah.
I have the same thing to offer that you have.
Mhm.
And but I remember feeling it was like a gut punch,
Mhm.
and I just learned to play it off. I just
Yeah.
never acknowledged it. You keep it inside.
Right.
And so I went from there. So that was my growing up.
Yeah.
Now I'm a parent. My husband's in the military, and I told you we went to Wyoming, and
Mhm.
then from Wyoming we went to Guam. We loved Guam. We loved it. And I have to tell you, everyone's brown. So we didn't have these racial
Mm.
issues at
Yeah.
all.
Mhm.
And the people who had issue with it were white people
Mm.
because just like in Hawaii, the Chamorros called white Americans haoles. That's how they
Mhm.
referred to white people. And but we didn't get treated any different. We
Mhm.
as black Americans, we didn't get treated differently. And half the time they thought I was Chamorro anyway, so they did. So,
Yeah.
but it was just the best feel. It was this sense of freedom
Mm.
that I had never experienced
Mhm.
before. And then we left there and we came to Illinois. And I'm a paralegal, so when I was working at a big law firm downtown, um, we used to have these Bible studies at lunchtime. Sometimes we
Mhm.
would like pray. It would be a big group of people and women, and there was a race. Something was going on racially, and I can't remember what it was, but someone asked me about it, and I said, "Well, all I can say is here, since this is the most racist place I've been in my life."
Mhm.
And one lady cried. She was so hurt to hear that.
Mhm.
And I said, and they said, "Why?" I said, "Well, when we first got here, we came from Guam. We have three sons. And we were in Walmart in O'Fallon. And Sean was about 12. He was 12 years old then. And he had to go to the bathroom. So he went to the bathroom. And I'm waiting around outside in the store looking around. And he came out, and the look on his face, he was devastated, and he was nervous. And Sean's a big boy. He's not, and he all my boys are very athletic, so they're not stranger to
Mhm.
anything, and they're boys, so they'll fight,
Yeah.
the whole thing.
Mhm.
So I said, "What's wrong?" And he said there was an older white man in the bathroom with him, and Sean was washing his hands, and the man said to him, "You see that in the mirror?" And Sean was like, mm-hmm. And he said, do you know what that is? And Sean was like, it's me. And he said, no, it's a monkey. It's just a monkey. And I have to tell you, Liz, when Sean told me that, the rage that welled up in me,
Oh,
it
that
came
makes
from
Mama
my
Bear come out.
toes. Oh my God. I searched that store looking for, I'm dragging Sean. You show me who he is. I mean, I was enraged. And then it was a rage that I had never felt before. But I was just livid. And we never found him. But I thought, who does that? You know, who does that? And then our boys, they went to Scott North first, and that was fine because it's a military community, and military is a little more used to integration, at least the Air Force. And then they had to go to Muscuda. Oh my gosh, I had to deal with the principals, the teachers. I had one teacher, he was also the basketball coach when Sean was playing, and I think Sean was in seventh or eighth grade. And our youngest son, Brian, at the basketball games, he would go and, when they're warming up and they have the balls out, and he helped go chase the balls and give them back to them and all that. And he did that, at the game. And this was an away game. It wasn't even at Muscuda. And Sean's coach said to him, we're sitting up in the stands. My husband's got the video camera out, and Brian comes up later, and Brian's 3 years younger than Sean, and he was really sad. And I said, what's wrong? And he said, because I saw him talking to him. I saw him say something to my son. And Brian said, he told me to get away. Who do I think I am touching the balls? I don't need to touch these balls, to get away from there. Like, he was really mean to him. And I said, what? And so in between games, I went down there and I said, excuse me, can I talk to you for a minute? And this is what he did to me. He said, what? And I said, well, if you don't have time right now, I can wait till later. But if you have a second, I just wanted to explain that this is Sean's brother that was racking the balls. And, he wasn't trying to, do anything disrespectful. And he's told me, take 2 aspirin and call me in the morning. I'm a parent.
Yeah.
With a concern. And so then the next day I was livid. And I went, the next day I went to Muscuda. I went to the school to talk to the principal. And then he sat down, he called the teacher in, and the teacher laid back in his chair like, I'm not worth the time to have a conversation. And I explained to them, I'm a Christian. I don't want to, I'm not trying to cause any ruckus, but you were very disrespectful to me, and I'm a parent. Then he tried to lie and say, well, I didn't know who you were. And I said, but you see me pick up my son every day. And if you didn't know who I was, why did you let Sean go home with me? You should never let a kid go home with somebody who's not their parent,
Right.
And he was just trying to save himself at that point. And so I asked them, I said, I want this to go further. I'm not settling for this little, okay, you met with her, that's fine. So I called the school board in Muscuda, Dr. McGowan, and they wouldn't take my calls. So I said, okay, I'm a paralegal. I know how to write. So, and I know how to make it sound a little bit threatening. So I wrote them a letter and I said, if I don't hear from you I gave them a time and a date, I will take this to Springfield, and I immediately got a phone call. Immediately. We met with them. I explained the situation. My husband and I both went in there. We explained the situation and the disrespect. I'm not taking it. I'm not going to take it. And you're not going to treat my kids bad. I'm not having it. And he got put on, he had to go to sensitivity classes. And then in that meeting, found out this wasn't the first time.
Did you see him after? Did the sensitivity classes help or work?
I couldn't tell because our other two boys went to school there too and had him as coaches.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he never really messed with them like he did with Sean.
Mm-hmm.
But he, I had to deal with that. And when it was time for high school, I was like, there's no way I'm sending my kids to Mosquito High School. No way. Mm-hmm. And I said, so we sent them to Althoff. Well, that's just another different kind of thing that we had to deal with. And I mean, because in the Althoff, in the Catholic world, they're very, you're Catholic, so you have an in. If you're not Catholic, you're on the outside. And if you're white and Catholic, you're really in.
Well, as humans, we have so many ways to divide up each other and make little groups. And I love Dr. Seuss, but I always read my kids the Sneetches on the Beaches. And when, are you familiar with that story? When things like this come up, in fact, I was talking with my children just the other day, about racism and, if you see something, you need to stop it and that sort of thing. And they're like, it's like the Sneetches. And I'm like, exactly. Like, it doesn't matter who has stars upon theirs. Let's all get together.
Right.
But what I hear, though, in your story is, like, I'm hopeful for our future still. I know we're still in a bad place and we're taking exceedingly long amount of time to make progress. But as you can see in your story, with each generation, there were changes made. And, I don't know what years your boys went to school there, but I had kids in elementary and middle school while we lived in that area. And my daughter, I was listening to your story about going out for cheerleading. My daughter was a cheerleader and she was on track and on both of those teams, she was the minority. And, it wasn't a thing. It was, we hung out together. We did life together. And it was like a non-issue. And maybe there were issues, but I didn't see them because I'm white. I don't know. But those were her friends. We did carpools and did rides together. And so I think that just, living in community, that having friendships, those kinds of things are the direction we need to move.
You're right. Something you said yesterday when you talked to Tawana made me think. You were like, you realize that from the time the Emancipation Proclamation was made, it took 100 years for things to actually happen. Well, I started thinking about the first, when I was a kid, the first about hearing about racial issues and all that. And of course, it was Martin Luther King. And, and then I remember and even as a grown person and doing a little more research and learning more about him, he was a peaceful Christian protester, and he just wanted to go for change. Then you had, at the same time, Malcolm X, and he was more by any means necessary. We're going to take it by force. But I asked God, I said, well, we've tried it peaceful, we've tried it forceful, but they both came out with the same results. They were both killed. And I thought, wow, Lord, this is just so, it makes you feel like there's a no-win, it's a no-win situation. And for me, I don't believe everything that happens is everything's a white person's fault and all that. I'm not that person. But when something's wrong, it's wrong.
Well, we're
and
all
it can be
messed up
wrong
without Jesus.
Yeah.
Nobody can claim innocence.
Right.
Yeah.
It can be wrong on both sides. And it's just so hard. And then, you know, another friend, Jody, had asked me, she's in the same place you are. She wants to learn more and know more. And when she asked me that question, I thought, there's so many layers to racism, because even in the Black community itself, there's racism. You have the light skin versus the dark skins and all that. And that
I
was
just
all,
found that out yesterday. I didn't know that was a thing. But
because in slavery times, usually the dark skin people worked in the field. The light skin people were house Negroes, and they were treated a little bit better. You can say that, but a lot of the women got raped.
Yeah.
You know, and but so did the dark skinned ones, because they were good for breeding and all that stuff, like animals. And so it sets up this inner thing, and I've had to deal with that, you know, in my life with Black people. My husband and I were talking. There's so many things, you know, when you ask me about there's so many things that just came rushing back to me. I was a cheerleader, like I told you, and I remember we played basketball at a school that had a lot of Black, African American, whatever you want to call it, Black people. And
that was going to be my next question. We'll get to that next.
and I remember I went to predominantly almost all white school. There was like 10 Black people in my class. And I remember when we got there, you know, there's a lot of Black people there, crowd, and the white cheerleaders were coming to me, oh, protect me, protect me. Nobody had done anything, but they saw a lot of Black faces, and they came to me like, now I'm your savior against these people I don't even know.
That's very, very,
and they hadn't
weird.
And they hadn't done anything.
Yeah.
And so, and mind you, I'm like 16 years old.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do for you. And then back then you had to go do a hello cheer to the other crowd. I was so embarrassed. They chanted to me 0.5. They called me 0.5, saying I'm half, because I wasn't Black enough, and of course I'm not white enough. So it's a
catch-22 on both sides of the deal.
You don't know what to do. You really don't. And so there's just, you know, I was telling Jody about Spike Lee made a movie, I think it's called Higher Learning, and that's what it's about, the light skins versus the dark skins, and how we have learned, Black people have learned to hate themselves. And so when you see them acting out and rioting and sometimes like white people will say, well, they're so lazy, they don't want to work and stuff like that. It's almost like they're in a place of no hope. And if you can have the empathy to understand that they've been beaten down, and maybe not the people that are younger, but their parents and grandparents have been beaten down so much that they feel like it doesn't matter what I do.
Yeah,
I'm going to lose. I remember I was. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, we witnessed some of that when we were in Illinois. Our church did a thing where we would take food to the, you know, it was a poor neighborhood in St. Louis, and it was, you know, government housing. So people who lived there who didn't have jobs maybe, or you know, just didn't make enough money. But the setup with it was, if you get a job, then you lose your housing.
Yeah.
It was like there. And so I'm sure somebody somewhere thinks, oh, we're helping these people who don't have a job. No, you're keeping them stuck in poverty. And then their children grow up in that too. I'm like, they need a bridge. They need a transition to get from here to there. But as soon as they try to take the first step, you just take the bridge out from underneath them. And I'm like, that I was so frustrated by that system. I'm like,
but people don't realize that.
Yeah.
they think people want to be on welfare. They
Yeah.
think people want to be in the situations they're in, and that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah. Well, they were
You know,
keeping them in that place and not
right.
letting them out. Because
Exactly.
if you try to go somewhere better, you get your house taken away.
Yes.
I want to go back to what we were saying earlier, though, because I was, we talked about this beforehand, but I'd like your help with kind of the 101 on terminology, because I know there's a lot of new terms to learn and some that have been around a long time, but and I've talked to some of my white friends too, and we're kind of confused, and sometimes I'm like not sure which word to say between Black and African American, or people of color, or Black and brown, and there's different distinctions, and this is an area where I'm educating myself. But I was just wondering if you could speak to that for a moment and help us understand that better, so that we can speak respectfully about and to other people. Of course, nobody likes labels, but
no, but
it is
what it is. It is what it is. Well, see, everybody's different. I can't speak for the whole community of Black people, because some people say, like my mom, she used to say, "Are they colored?" Well, we don't say colored. We don't say colored. And Negroes out, and then it became Black, and then African American. And some people take offense to being called African American. I've never been to Africa. Why am I African American? I don't know anything about Africa, And sometimes I really think it boils down to a personal choice. And you just gonna have to ask the question. What do you prefer? And really, people don't prefer. They just want to live.
Right. You don't want anything. I'm like, well, I don't really feel white either, but I just accept that label. I mean, I'm kind of a light golden brown, maybe. Now, my oldest daughter, that girl's white. She has no melanin. She gets a sunburn in the shade. I'm serious.
Oh, wow.
So I would call her white, but I'm actually a little darker complected. Just, we have 8 kids, and just within our own white family, we actually have different shades of children. Our youngest was, he had really blonde hair, really light hair, light complected, blue eyes. And my oldest son at the time was a teenager. He's in the sarcasm phase, and he's like, "Mom, you're running out of printer ink."
Well, it's the same way in the Black community. You have all shades of Black people. And I know that when Brian was little, our youngest son, he used to say, "Daddy and Sean are chocolate because they're darker skin. Brad is caramel, and Mommy, me and you are vanilla." He used to say that all the time. And I used to say no. I tried to teach him, and it was hard because children, and we lived on Guam at the time, so everybody was brown. His class, there were some, but he was in the gifted and talented class, so he didn't have, it was like they all looked the same. So it was different, but I think it's a preference, a personal preference that people have on what they want to be called.
I like your idea. I think we should go by food. I mean, that's not offensive. Like chocolate and caramel and vanilla and brown sugar. Like,
yeah.
I don't know.
I mean,
sounds good to me.
But seriously, I think you just have to. We're so afraid to ask the questions, and I think it puts Caucasian people in a precarious situation when they feel like they have to ask, because now it's like I'm inviting this stuff onto me. But
I have some friends I've spoken to are like, I want to speak out and I want to say something. I want to show my support, but I'm afraid I'll say it wrong and people will be angry or hurt. And that's the thing too. We've been encouraged in our wing here at our base to have difficult conversations with people. And part of those difficult conversations is just, let's talk about our vocabulary and what things do we say. There's sometimes people will use a word and not even know it's offensive. That was just the word that they heard. And I
And
can
then
think of
on
several
that,
examples that don't even have to do with race at all, but just other things. And so part of it's just that learning process of engaging with other people who are different than ourselves, and saying, how can we speak to each other respectfully and listen compassionately, and not get tied up in knots around the peripheral issues that, I mean, we need to settle the vocabulary so that we can hear one another.
right. But I
and
think,
not past
Elizabeth,
each other.
it's more about having that conversation.
Mhm.
It's like, okay, I can't be afraid. If you say something that offends me, I can't be afraid, or I need to stop being afraid to
Mhm.
initiate the conversation and say,
Mhm.
you know, when you said XYZ, it it offended me. And then I
Mhm.
can tell you why it offended me.
Right.
And like my husband, you know, in the Black community, people use the N-word like it's just a nickname.
Mhm.
And my husband refuses that. And he doesn't allow that word to be said in our home or even around him. He hates it. And uh, to him, it's very offensive, and people died because of that name. And other people, it's just like a term of endearment.
Mhm.
So, but we have to be able to have the conversation. We can't be
Mhm.
afraid. And we've been hiding so long in our own little worlds because we have these thoughts, but we don't want to say it because I don't want to,
Mhm.
you know, rattle
I want to
the,
step on toes or get,
yeah,
things blowback that I
yeah,
didn't want.
or it's gonna make us both uncomfortable. And then I like things the way they are right now, and even though I know they're over there and we're over here, we can just live with that, you know. And because Black people, we learn to assimilate.
Mhm.
That's just what it's ingrained.
Mhm.
We learn to assimilate ourselves into whatever situation we find ourselves. We learn to like, okay, I can't be this way here because they won't understand that. They'll think it's something bad when it's not. Or I
Mhm.
can't be over here on this side. And this is the thing that used to drive me nuts and sometimes still does. Um, you don't talk like a Black person. Well, what does that mean? I speak English,
I know.
you
I,
know?
it's a different subject, and so I don't want to hijack our subject,
Yeah.
but I can really relate to what you're saying. As a woman who graduated from the Air Force Academy back in the early '90s, I kind of joke that I spent 4 years in a men's prison, which is not too far from the truth.
I know.
But I had that same thing of I have to assimilate, and in some situations I'm expected to act like a man, and in other situations if I act like a man, it's off-putting, and just kind of that walking the line between, I could never really be one of the guys. I say that I felt like a younger brother, that I wasn't one of the guys, but they didn't see me as a woman either. I was chuckling inside about my own memories when you were talking about the person who dismissed you of, oh, she's Black, you wouldn't want to date her, because I had a similar experience. The guys were, this was at the end of our first summer, so we'd been kind of in quarantine, whatever, but they were looking out the window and there was an upperclassman who was escorting his civilian girlfriend across the terrazzo, and they're like, oh man, it's been so long since I've seen a woman. And I'm standing right there, and I was like, well, what am I? And they go, oh, you don't count. You're a cadet chick. You're not a real woman. And I was like, okay, I don't really know how to respond to that. But I thought, well, if that's the way that you respond to a real woman is by drooling on the glass, then I don't really want to be in that club anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I realize that's different, and I don't want to hijack it and go to sexism, because that's a whole nother can of worms. But my point is to just say, even though we have very different lives, I can relate to you with that feeling, because I felt that feeling in a different context. But
yeah, so we have more things that are alike than
yes.
we have different.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can get past the color of our skin and get past that, I may not do things the way you do things. You may not do things the way I do things, but it's still okay.
Let's hang out together anyway and have fun, right?
Yeah. Our differences actually make us stronger.
Hmm.
They make us better. And when we can get past that, we can operate so
Hmm.
much better, and we'd be operating more the way Jesus wants us to operate in the first place.
Yeah.
Um,
So I was talking with some friends yesterday about, when we get to heaven, we've already been told it's every tribe and every tongue and every nation all together. And I'm like, why don't we just start practicing that now? I
yeah.
don't, back to several of the examples you gave, I'm like, what is so hard about just being nice to people? That's what I don't understand. And
I say that about Black people. Sometimes Black people will be so quick to like pounce, but it's because they don't trust. That's the problem.
yeah.
They've been burned so many times that they can't trust. Liz, when we were on Guam, my husband, we both played softball. We were on different teams, and most of our friends, well, we had an even amount, were Caucasian. We had Black, we had whatever, Chamorro friends. But I remember in particular this one Black guy. He worked with my husband, and he said he came to one of the gatherings we had at our house at a party, and he told me he was going like this. And I was like, what are you talking about? He goes, you need to get them out of your house. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he was like, white people, you need to get them out of your house. You can't trust them. You shouldn't be letting them in your house like this. And so afterwards, I just blew him off and laughed it off, But afterwards, I had a conversation with him. Well, he was from Mississippi, and he began to tell me stories that he lived, and he has experienced having to jump and hit the floor because the Klan was out there shooting up their house. He was raised by his grandmother. And was shooting up their house. Then I understood, because I used to tell my husband, I can't take him. He's driving me nuts. He's making separation when it doesn't have to. There doesn't have to be separation. But once I understood where he was coming from, I saw him in a different light. And I understood. And then now, because I get that, I'm able to have a conversation with him. And say to him, but that's not been my experience.
Right. We lived a year in Korea. We were stationed over there, and I had a very similar experience. Initially, it's just such a different culture in so many ways. And we weren't on a military installation in a little American bubble. We were on a Korean base in Korean base housing, and we just were like ultra integrated.
Were you at Osan?
No, we're at Daegu. It's a Korean base. My husband was helping them set up their squadron there. But early on in our experience there, I would get so frustrated going, why are they this doesn't make sense to me. I just couldn't mesh with the culture very well. But over time, as I spent more time with them, as I learned more things, I realized all those things that they did that I thought were weird or strange, there was a reason why. There's a backstory behind it. And sometimes there's a good reason why. And sometimes it's just, well, that's the way we've always done it. But still, it's a reason. It's not just coming out of the blue like it looked like it was to me. And so as I, try to look, I'm behavioral science background. So I'm always like, what motivates people? And, as I do that, I'm like, there's a reason why they're acting like that. And I'm still struggling with some of the, just watching the video of George Floyd and the police sitting on his neck with his hands in his pocket. And I'm just like, what was going through that guy's mind at that time? And I don't know. I can't, there's a lot of questions where I'm like, why are people like the man you mentioned in the bathroom with your son? What? So I really have a hard time figuring out what motivates that kind of thing. But
well, it's a lot of it is ingrained. That's how they were raised. What I didn't tell you, when we lived on Guam, we had some white friends, and I was over at her house one day, and she had a neighbor that was from West Virginia, and we lived on the base. We lived on Anderson, and Mickey was telling me, that was my friend. She was telling me that she was mad at her friend Susan, who was from West Virginia, because her friend, one of the neighbors, had their child had broke one of the windows in the base housing, and you have to pay for certain things that you tear up. You know how that is. Well, Susan told the other neighbor, just say a black boy walked by and threw a rock and busted your window. I was so offended. Yeah. I have 3 sons. That black boy could have been mine.
Right. Well, it's a way to pass off blame to somebody, but not take responsibility.
It flowed out of her mouth like, this is what I do. And then when you read history books and you see movies based on historical events, that was the way things were done. To Kill a Mockingbird, that's what it was about.
Right.
So it's just ingrained. And when we both on each side, every side can understand that everybody on that side is not right and good, and everybody on this side is not right and good, but we can be good together. And when we can get to that point, it's got to take a conversation, an honest conversation, where I don't have to soft pedal my words that like dumb them down for you, because this is how I feel. Right. And
to just be you, and the world is okay with that.
Yes. Because I find that like I have a debate, sometimes it's ongoing, it's always about race, with this boy I went to high school with on Facebook. He really never hits me up or anything unless it's a racial thing, and he always has something, and he's trying to convince me that it's the black people's fault that these things happen. And my thought is, I don't agree with you. And
did he not study history?
but that's the thing. Just like Christians can compartmentalize. Okay, this is bad. Abortion's bad. We can all agree on that. But this race thing, we can live with that. But as a black Christian, you're like, well, we can't. Yeah. When I saw the George Floyd video, I cried, because when I saw him on the ground, I saw my husband, I saw my sons, I saw my dad, I saw my brothers, I saw my brother-in-laws. It could have been any of them. Now, everything they try to bring up, well, he was a bad character, he's a bad guy. Okay, I can go with that too. But that doesn't mean the man was handcuffed. That was not okay. And that doesn't make me pro-black and we're never wrong. That's just wrong. Yeah. And this is the argument that I have. It's not really an argument, it's a debate with this one boy. He's telling me this. Well, when I state my feelings, then you could have said it this way, it would have been easier to swallow. Well, that's what's causing this anger now, is we're tired. Right. We've been saying it for so long, and you can't hear me.
Right. You just want to speak your truth and have somebody receive that as it is. It's
my truth.
We need to validate your feelings, and they are real, and you don't have to prove why you feel that way, or we just need to accept that.
And because once I can understand your side, I can get it, and I've done that for my whole life. I understand. Okay, you're afraid of this and you're afraid of that. You think this is going to happen because fear. My husband says all the time, the tools of the devil: anger, fear, and guilt.
Mm-hmm.
It causes people to act a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't realize it, because I think that most people, Elizabeth, are not intentionally trying to be mean or nasty or racist. I think that it's just the way they've always done things, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just I just didn't want my children to have to deal with it,
Mm-hmm.
but they do. And Brian, my youngest son, he really brings it out, and I was shocked. But he's a pilot in the military,
Mm-hmm.
and in that world, it's a very racist world, and I never knew that. And because there's not very many black pilots.
No, there's not. I asked my husband the other, because he's a fighter pilot, and
Mm-hmm.
I've often wondered. I'm like, where are the black people in our community? I'm also a part of the homeschool community, and I don't know why, but there's very few black families there as well. But I asked my husband. I said, he's served 25 plus years. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
how many black fighter pilots do you know? And he said 3. He's met
Mm-hmm.
3. And I don't know what, I don't know the factors leading up to that, or what, but I just feel like it shouldn't be that way. I feel like there's no excuse for that, and we need to do better. But
it hurt my heart. I mean, Brian, we've had to fight but it was on a sports level, to be fair, equal evaluations.
mm-hmm.
When he went to Althoff, they already had in mind this other boy. They wanted to be the quarterback. They tried to talk Brian out of being a quarterback, saying you can be a running back, and guaranteeing him these spots and stuff. And he was like, I want to be the quarterback. That's what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And so the coach of the team, called my other son in that was 2 years ahead of him, and
Mm-hmm.
said, can you help me talk your brother into being a running back? And so then there wouldn't be this quarterback controversy. And Brad told him, he said, Coach, he goes, I can tell you something about my brother. He goes, the more you tell him he can't do something, the more he's going to prove to you that he can.
That sounds familiar.
He
You got
gets
that from Mama Cheerleader.
Yes, he gets that from me.
Yeah.
And he told him that, and then Brad had felt some kind of way. He goes, it was funny at the time to hear him. He said, Mom, I just felt like he thinks I'm some kind of boss, like a
Mm-hmm.
slave.
Yeah.
I'll tell him, that's how my son felt.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, we laughed about that, but
Mm-hmm.
Brian didn't. And so then we knew that the deck was stacked against us, because they're all friends in the Catholic school. That's just how it is. And I remember we sent Brian to quarterback camp every year since he was 8th grade. It was a QBR camp, and they really had high praise for him. They thought he was really good. So then I heard that Brian, his junior year, I heard that the boy that he was competing against and some of the other boys on the team were going to camp at Northwestern College in University in Chicago. And Brian had just got back from 2 camps. He went to Ohio State, he went to QBR. And I was at work, and I said, I'm going to send Brian to that camp so that now they can see. It won't be us saying Brian's better. It's now, this is an objective voice.
Right.
It would be an objective voice.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a funny thing. I called Northwestern. I got him in. It was last minute.
Mm-hmm.
And I got him in. We took him up there to that camp. My husband took him, and then he came back home because he was up there for like a week. And then I went to pick him up. And when I got there, I was looking for Brian, and I saw the boy that he competed with, and he was grouped with this like 6th grade, 7th grade. Now he's a junior in high school, and the coach was saying, "Son, you can't throw because you're shot putting. You can't really throw the ball." And so I was looking for him, and I saw this other family that I had met in Arkansas when he went to QBR camp. And I said, "Have you seen Brian?" And they said, "Oh, he's in the field house. He's with the blue chip players." And he was. And Northwestern gave him a recruiting package before we left. And so I took it back because they give it to me to give to the coach. So I took it and gave it to the coach. And because I'm thinking, okay, if this isn't proof to you, they were both at the same place. It's and so it was still a battle. And a man from St. Louis had to come and make the determination because the coach didn't want to do it because of the clickiness of the school. And so it was just, I would not have thought, Brian graduated high school in 2003. I would not have thought I would have to, it's the same thing that we went through before, that my dad went through, my mom went through. It's the same thing.
Yeah, that's what I keep thinking is I'm like, I can't believe we're still dealing with this same issue. Why are we not, as humanity, past this yet? And it's frustrating.
But Elizabeth, I believe that as we read the Bible, that God always starts in his house.
Yes.
With the believers. And I believe that it's time for the Christian believing family of God to rise up. And we need you. We need the white people because they're not listening to the black boys. Just like the civil rights. If it wasn't for white people, it would have never gone through, And so we need you. And
it hurts me of how segregated we are in our churches.
It's the most segregated hour of the week.
Yeah, our church in Illinois was very multiracial.
Diverse.
But now, I've moved down further south, I guess it is. Some people say, well, that's just North Carolina, but it's very segregated. And I wanted the same flavor of the church that we had in Illinois and really had a hard time finding it. And, even there are churches that say, the first black church of whatever. I'm like, it's even on their title of, nobody puts the first white church. They don't put that on their building. But if you go inside and look at the congregation, it is. There was even, this was years ago, but there was a sign that said, something about all God's people. And it had the red and yellow, black and white little stick figures. And we tried it out as a church, and it's like, it's all white people. Like, your sign says one thing. Your congregation says another.
But I think God, He wants to clean up this house, the church, the believers, the house of believers, to get it right. Yeah. And when we can get it right, we can change this world. That's what we're supposed to do anyway.
It's God's love. I think that's gonna.
It is. Love covers a multitude of sin. And I believe that. I just do. And I'm reading this book called Dear White Christians. And it's written by a local guy. And it's really good. So far, as much as I've read, I just got it. It came in the mail to me yesterday. And so it's because of the misunderstanding, like you can go to a diverse church, but usually the senior pastor is going to be white, and then most of all the ministers are going to be white, the elders are going to be white, all the leadership is white, and you just attend there, and yes, you can get in, but you're never going to be in a leadership position, and that's part of the problem.
Yeah, our church in Illinois was not like that. It was, the senior pastor, was
Rick.
Yeah. But here in North Carolina, this is like our third assignment here, but previously we went to a church that it was very mixed racially also, but did have a African American or Black pastor. He said similar things to what you've said, because, you know, he was lighter colored, and he said something about, do you know what it's like to grow up as a Black man with my color of skin? And I was like, no, I don't get that. But, you know, he alluded to that same thing. But yeah, I agree. I think that's where it needs to start. And we're having a great conversation. I hate to cut us off, but we kind of.
I know.
Say what you're going to say, and then I'll.
I was going to ask you, did you remember when Pastor Rick did the white privilege
Yes.
sermon? And I think that needs to be done in churches, because we can start it. We can do it. Yeah. And once you get understanding, and it's not a dig. It's really not a dig on white people. It's just that I have privilege being a lighter skinned Black person. I get something that my darker sisters don't necessarily get. It's this privilege of the lighter skin, and white people, they have the privilege that they don't realize they have. Yeah. You know, and so I really think that should be taught. Because I was shocked when he did that sermon. I was,
and I get that because of my experience in an all male world of, you know, they have privileges as men that they just take for granted because they don't know any different. And so that connects with me, that concept. I don't feel like defensive of, oh no, I don't have white privilege. I'm like, yeah, I get it. You know, when you're in the majority population, you get special favors that you don't ask for, and you don't even know you're getting them. And that's just how life works, unfortunately. Yeah. Well, I want to go ahead and wrap up with the last question that I'm asking everybody this week is, if you were going to give the Martin Luther speech and say, I have a dream. Sorry, I should say Martin Luther King. I'm not talking about the 95 Theses here. I'm not asking you for 95 Theses, but if you were going to say, I have a dream, you know, for what it looks like in our future, in our country, what would that be for you?
I have a dream that instead of us saying in the Black neighborhood, in the Black community, in the white community, we will be able to say in our community. It won't be the distinctions of you're Black and that you live in the Black community. I have a dream, almost like Martin Luther King had, that we won't be judged by the color of our skin, but by the content of our character. So that would be, I agree with him 100% on that. I have a dream. I have a dream that it will no longer be people take double takes when there's mixed couples. I have a dream. But I really, really appreciate you taking, listening to God and taking this on, even though you might not have wanted to.
Yeah, it's scary for me. Yeah, I was telling you earlier, I'm like, I tried to talk God out of it and go, I'm not your girl. And he's like, no, you are.
You are the perfect girl.
Well, I'm way outside of my comfort zone on a lot of levels on this, but I just feel like I can't be silent anymore. I have to do something with the, I don't know, angst. Is that the right word? That I feel inside about things that are going on. And I can't just go, well, that's a bummer, and sit here and do nothing. Yeah. And so God often asks people, what's in your hand? You know, and Moses had a staff. That was it. Yeah. And I thought I have the ability to listen compassionately, and I have a small platform where I can have people share and we can all listen. And so as I prayed about it, this is what I feel like God brought up or invented. So anyway, I really appreciate you partnering with me on this, because if it was just me here talking by myself, that would be really boring and not needed. So,
but Elizabeth, I turned it over so many times too myself. You know, it was like, oh, do I really want to go there? Do I, you know, it's, but I felt this prompting too, that no, you need to say it. Quit trying to hide.
Right.
You know,
I think this is how we're one of the ways that we're going to move forward in the process, make progress. Sorry. And yeah, I read an article just today that said prayer is activism. And I was like, oh, I kind of, I hadn't thought of it that way. But, obviously in all things, praying is the most significant work that we can do. But thank you so much for spending time with us today. Really appreciate it. It's good to see you again. I miss you guys.
You too. I miss you too.
Okay. All righty. Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye-bye. You too.